Hello, everybody. We'd like to welcome you to this last afternoon session of CSTA 2014. I'm Tammy Pierman. I'm on the CSTA board. I'm the proctor for this session. And I'd like, it's my pleasure to introduce to you Lester Wainwright from Virginia. And he is going to talk about AP Computer Science from grid world to labs. I have two very short announcements. Don't forget, after this, you're going to go down. We have a keynote speaker, and we have a big giveaway. In your packet, your agenda, the last page is a evaluation. We very much valued your feedback. I'm on the conference committee, and I can tell you, really, we read all of them, and they do become part of our planning for the next conference. So if there is anything you found particularly great or less than, please let us know, and we will take that into account when planning next year's conference, which I hope we all see you at. Thank you.
Okay, as she said, I am Lester Wainwright. I'm from Charlottesville, Virginia. I teach at Charlottesville High School, and I am the new Renee Chesky, in case you all know who she is. She is the College Board Advisor, and I'm the new one starting, I suppose now. Well, at least August, by the August meeting. Oh, I know she is, and she's not off the hook either, because I've got her number on speed dial, and it's going to be, Renee, what do I do? But originally, if you read the initial brochure, you were supposed to have Karen Donathan actually come and speak to you on this. I don't know if you all know her. She's from Virginia. She's from the other Virginia, West Virginia, and she had some conflicts, and so they asked me would I come and step in. So I'm going to try and share my moments of wisdom about the changes in the curriculum from Grid World to the new labs. First of all, I want to find out what my audience is. Who am I working with? So, if you're going to be a first-time teacher next year, can you stand? Anyone? Okay, we got one. All right.
Michelle.
All right. Welcome. It's not that intimidating, I'm sure you. It's lots of fun. How about this? You've been teaching APCS less than 3 years. Okay. All right, good. This should be the majority then. You've been teaching APCS for more than 3 years. The majority of you. And an additional, you teach at a college or university. Anyone here from the college or university? Okay, good. Now the reason I bring up these last couple, well, how about this? You've participated in the APCS reading. How about that? And you see, that's only, what, 5 people. So anyone that's in the last two categories, go ahead, sit down. Anyone in the last two categories, you've been teaching for more than 3 years, or you're a college university professor, you are eligible to become an APCS reader. And there's a process to going through and doing that, and we welcome all comers, actually. You know, we're actually moving in the past few years. We've been in Cincinnati, and it's a lot of fun. You can ask anyone that's there, you know. And they've changed the week, yes. Not only is it moving, yes, it's in the beginning it was week 2 when I first started in 2000. And it was great because I didn't have to worry about missing school. And then they moved it to week 1, and so that became a little problem. But now it's going back to week 2, and it's moving to Missouri, which means I have to fly, but I always drive to these things. But still, if you're interested, then go on the web, and there's also a brochure at the end that we have a survey for you all to fill out so that it gives you information about how to become an APCS reader. So we are looking for more readers. You know, our numbers have gone up. We had almost 30,000 this year, actually. Almost 40,000. Yes, 37 or something. So our numbers are going up, and we hope to continue that. And which means we need more readers. Otherwise, they force us to work harder and harder and harder. So we need all that we can get. Besides just looking at the, it's the second week. Basically, there are 2 separate sessions for grading. The first session starts like the first week of June. Right, and then the second session is the next week after that. So I think it starts on the, forgot what it is for this coming Right. And so it is a week-long thing, but you know, it's all about, for high school teachers, especially public high school teachers, it's getting your administration to give you permission to miss school and how they handle that. So being the second week, that gives you less classes to miss. For me, my school ends on that Friday and I will catch a plane on that Saturday so I can make it if I have to. So it's all good. So if you're interested, by all means, go through the process, please, because we are looking for readers. And if you have 3 or more years of experience, then you are eligible. Yes, sir.
Can I add my input? Fabulous professional development experience. You think that grading exams all week long would be boring? It's amazingly fun. A lot of camaraderie in the room, and usually everybody goes out for dinner and whatever afterwards. So
There's a little more.
okay.
And they feed you constantly, but we'll talk about that later. You know,
it's
the pros.
it's amazing.
It is, you know, you may think it's not fun or anything, but they give you the rubric, you follow the rubric, and time passes. The next thing you know, it's time to go. So it is a great experience. So we look forward to having some of you apply and see you in Missouri next year. Okay, I decided, rather than just looking at the 3 the 3 labs, I also want to talk about the changes that are going on in the course and in the course description. And one of them is, this is the first one, is that we are requiring that you have at least 20 hours of laboratory in-class experience. Now I know if you're like me, I spend at least 85% of my time in the lab. You know, I lecture once a week and then we work on programs. But this is to just ensure that schools have the labs available so that they're not just lecturing and then kids are going home doing the labs on their own. We do want supervised attention so that they can get proper instruction. So that's what that's all about. So if you have a current class now, I'm sure you're exceeding this 20 hours of in-class experience. Teachers have latitude, which means that in the past, you know, we've had the Grid World case study, and it's all about when you choose to do it, and also whether or not you have multiple years to do this, because a lot of schools have an intro class and then they have the AP, and so they can bridge off of what they learned in course 1 to help them finish the case study. And in this case right here, we no longer have the case study, so that there's not going to be code that you have to memorize or truly understand. The labs, we'll talk about those a little bit later, but the idea is you have the latitude to use some of the labs that you may choose, that you created for your course, and make things work out. There are 3 labs, and we'll go through those a little bit later, and the good and when to use them accordingly in the class. And also in the course description, we've added search and sort code. Now, kids do not have to memorize this code or anything, but what it does, it gives them a structure so that when we talk about sorting and searching, we're going in ascending order. And if you look in textbooks, they can go all over the place, ways you've never thought of, and even kids. So this is sort of standardizing how we're going to ask questions. So it's not something that they can memorize, that they need to memorize, but it does give them the order and structure of how AP is going to refer to it in ascending order. Okay? And the other newest thing is the 2-dimensional thing. When we first reintroduced 2-dimensional arrays into the AP curriculum, we didn't necessarily need to know that they were arrays of arrays. Well, now they do, so that you can actually pass in a row from a 2-dimensional array into a 1D array method or something that receives it. So it's going to be that idea. That's the newest thing that's added to it. Everything else is basically the same. If everything worked for you before, it'll continue to work, you know. So I don't want people to freak out and go, oh my God, we're making grand changes, we have to introduce these labs and all of this stuff. It's not necessarily so. Okay, what do I need to know for the 2015 exam? Number 1, just make sure that you go through the course description and look at the changes of the course description. And I have it here somewhere. It's never where I want it, and I just had it, and of course it is not to be found. Fine. But in the course description, I got a link here. Let's see if it's going to work. There we go. Make sure you go through and read through the highlights of the course description. But the things I find most important, starting here in Appendix A, where it's going through and telling you about the Java subset. And if you've looked at the Java subset in the past, sometimes it's sort of hard to read. And so what we did, we spent time last year reorganizing this thing. We created this table which gave you the things that are tested on the APCS exam, as well as additional things that are not necessarily tested. And then you see these numbers in between here. These are actually clarifications. So you look at the table and look at the topics that are presented here. I'm sorry, if you can't, I can make it a little bit larger maybe, but it's going to mess everything up. My computer is old and doesn't agree with me half of the time. But as you go through the table, it lists the things that are tested on there, things that are potentially relevant but not necessarily tested. And then we have these numbers here. And then at the bottom, it's a ledger that actually explains what each one of these numbers represent. So that if you go through this, you will fully understand the minute changes that have occurred in the curriculum for this coming year and in the future. Okay? But each one, it gives you, a better explanation of what is going on in the course. So keep that in mind. So when you look at it, you can download it and look at the course description. Make sure you read through those things right there. So this clarifies exactly what should be happening on the exam next June or May when they take it. Next, after you go through all of these, another piece of advice or one downside of not having the case study, because some of you, and I've done this myself, is I told kids that if you don't remember how to do something, well, you have the case study, flip back through there and figure out how to declare a method or how to do a for each loop or how to do any of the things, the randoms, for instance. They always forget how to deal with randoms. Well, the new one, this is all you get. One page. It is, the quick reference is simply one page. So keep that in mind as you're teaching the course throughout the year. They no longer have reference code that they can flip back and figure out what is going on. All they get is the one page. Okay? Which, is basically all they need, but, that has been helpful when it was there. So I did want to bring that up. And then these are the, again, going through looking at the various searches and sorts that you're expected to know. It gives you the standardized code going from left to right, basically in ascending order. Okay? So those are the major changes. So if you're really worried about, oh my God, AP has changed and I'm not going to be able to keep up with it, that's not the case. If your kids are successful now, they're going to be successful next year as well. There are no major changes. The biggest change is that on the AP exam in the past, there have been 6 questions that dealt with the case study. Gone. So you're going to have 4 different free response questions. None of them are you going to have any insight into necessarily. And there was always 5 multiple choice questions, I believe, on the Grid World case study. And so those are gone as well. Okay? So those are the major changes, actually. So it's nothing that's earth-shattering or anything like that. It's just a matter of, reorganizing and looking at some of the things that are new. All right, so as I said in this slide here, Grid World is no longer testing the exam, period. Now, for those of us that have been readers, that can be a good thing, because in the past, anything that has been a 2D array, Grid World is creeping into the 2D array questions, adjacent neighbors and num rows and num columns. It always showed up, and if you're not in Grid World, then those things don't exist. And so that we should no longer see num rows, num calls, and things of that nature. The labs are not case studies. When I've been trolling through, the listserv or the teacher community, a lot of people are like, oh my God, we went from 1 case study to 3. It's not like that, actually. The 3 labs are supposed to be used as exemplars. They're showing you some of the concepts that are tested on the exam and how they can be used in a real world example. And how you decide to use those is up to you, but I do suggest that you try to go through them, because they do have some really good points, and we're going to look at some of those today. And like I said, the Java quick reference is only 1 page. So no more are you going to, no longer are you going to have the code to depend on. Another question I've seen is this: since Java 8 is out, will that be tested on the 2015 exam? No. Period. No. I personally don't even understand it myself, to tell you the truth. Stuart Regis came and did a presentation for us while we were at the reading this year, and I was like, So that, if kids know how to do this and they do it properly, someone will be able to decode it and figure out, does it work or not. But as for testing on the exam, no. There will be no multiple choice questions involving Java 8 code or syntax. And I don't see it in the immediate future either. It's going to be way down the road before that would possibly happen. Okay, so that to alleviate your fears. But if your student does know it, I'm hoping that I don't have to grade that particular paper, but if it does show up, we will definitely have someone to figure out the code and see if it's really applicable. Okay, as for the labs, there are 3 of them. They are called Magpie, Picture Lab, and 11s. And I don't know, how many of you actually participated in the thing yesterday with Barb Erickson and Crystal? A couple of you? Okay, well, they went through a lot, and I am not going to go through the code and the inner runnings of those programs, but we will look at some of the highlights of the various programs and show you, hopefully. Well, first of all, have you all had a chance to download these things and know where to find them? Yes, maybe. Well, if you're an existing teacher and you have an approved curriculum, then you can go to your own site and download them individually. If not, then become one. Or you can go to the actual College Board website for computer science and actually download the student versions of this material. But all the teacher material is actually kept behind the community for safety purposes, and hopefully it will stay that way so that as we're using these things, they won't become published to the world and kids can just go download everything like they've done in the past. But Picture Lab is basically string handling. It goes through and manipulates strings, and it's sort of like Siri, or it's a chat box thing where you give it a question, or it gives you a question and you give an answer, and so on and so forth. It gives you a proper response. In the beginning, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and then before it's all over, you actually program your chat bot to get smarter and answer questions appropriately. Picture Lab is based on Barb Erickson's work in MediaComp. And I don't know if any of you played with that, but that's all about manipulating pictures and sound in a 2D environment for the most part. And so we'll look at some of the things that's there, but it is focusing on 2D processing. And 11s is the one that is our new version of OOP, basically, where it's a solitaire game. And you're basically trying to, and it comes with a GUI as well. We'll actually look at that, because that's the best part of it, When I show my kids, well, the few that have actually had a chance to work on it, they got to see it in action first because it comes with a jar file that you get to run, and they got to see it, and then they got somewhat excited about actually making it work. But I haven't had a chance to do this one in my class because I don't know about all of you, but we on the East Coast got hit with snow, ice, and whatever else this year, and I missed about 10 days of class and had another 5 delays, which means my classes were only 25 minutes, so I didn't get where I wanted to go this year, and so I really haven't had a chance to test 11s in class to see how it works with students. I can think about it for myself, but until you really have to run it through with students, they will come up with ways to confuse you as a teacher and figure out, okay, what exactly are you doing? So I'm sort of looking forward to doing that one this year as well. In each one of these labs, you also get documentation, student guides, and teacher's guides. So the student guide is basically it's a PDF. For instance, the Magpie lab. This is it right here for students, and it goes through and actually has the students, tells them various things, how to go through and make changes within the code. And so what you're given is the PDF that explains to students how to go about doing these changes, and then you're also given example code to actually go through and do the work. And let me just show you, let me minimize all this stuff. So this is what you get when you download Magpie. I don't know if you all can see that, but you get the student lab PDF, the teacher lab PDF, and then you get the code, starter code, and the teacher code as well. So, they do supply the answers just in case you're going, oh my God, I don't know how to do this. The teacher code is there. And then inside the student activities for Magpie, for instance, it is broken up into various activities But for this one, like activity 3 sort of gives you the answers to activity 2 and so on and so forth. So you might want to manipulate some of the code within the various folders if you want to hide this material from the students. Otherwise, you can just give it to them as one big project, and then, you know, sequentially, mine didn't know it until they figured it out by the time they got to the end. But they did activity 2, and then they did activity 3, and it's like, oh, 3 has the answers to 2, and so they got a little smarter about it. But it does ask you, you know, as you run through it. For instance, this is Magpie 2. And what it does, in case you're wondering, you know, it has a series of key things, and so it says, hello, let's talk. And then it has a few common things that it's looking for. And, well, let me show you the code before I do this. I need the actual code. That's the runner. Here's the code. And so it has a few key words in there. For instance, if it locates the word no, right here, you know, the statement.index of no greater than or equal to 0, which means found it, it says why so negative. That's its common response. And it's looking for your family. So mother, father, sister, brother, its common response is tell me more about your family. So if that's included anywhere in the string that you type in, you'll get that response. Otherwise, it has a series of random responses, which are down here, and you get kids to add more random responses and make this become more intelligent as you run through it. The bad thing about it in the beginning, if anything, is, I don't want to run that, I have to run the runner. Come on. Is, once again, it says, hi, let's talk. Hello, let's talk. And right? Knowledge is power. What do you think it's going to return? Yes. Well, it's going to return why so negative.
Oh, because the NO.
Right, because the NO, it doesn't know, you know, it's searching for that substring no within this string here. And so therefore, it's looking for any NO in the word or in the entire phrase. So again, part of your process is how to differentiate NO, the word, versus somewhere else within another string, things like that. And so that's why using substring, which is quite often used on the AP exam, you know, substring and the methods of string. And so that's what's really exemplified in this particular case study, how to manipulate strings. And in doing so, you're basically talking about arrays, you know, and ultimately, rather than your choices just being simple, then you can make this thing go further and actually create with an array of responses and things like that. But, you know, it takes you through it. I did it in about a week, you know, and my kids, and you can do it early on because I generally teach strings early in the year, and that was the whole purpose behind going to the lab concept. We wanted something that you wouldn't be doing all year long necessarily, something that you could work with early like this one, and then once you get a little bit deeper into the course, you can do another lab, and then once you get to the inheritance structure and things of that nature, you get to a third lab or anything like that. Okay? We're not saying that you have to use these, but they do exemplify. Oh, come on. Even if I say yes, it won't do it for some reason. My machine is old. It's time for a new one. It just won't. But the point behind creating the labs is that you can use these throughout the course, however you like. But they do exemplify the ideas that are tested on the AP exam. Okay? So I just lost my, I don't know why I keep losing my thing. All right, so also inside this one, she did create some multiple choice questions and some free response questions to support, you know, if you want to, you know, elaborate a little bit further on this particular lab, then those things are available as well. But, you know, like I said, I did it in about a week and my kids sort of liked it, you know, they thought about it and some of the responses, you know, they had it talking and, oh, can I do this and that, you know, they got excited about it, so it was good. But again, this particular lab was actually created by Lori White. She's the former chair of the development committee and she teaches at Mercer University in Georgia. And most of you, or do some of you, I know some of you probably know Lori. She's always at the reading, so. Again, the basic ideas behind the lab: algorithmic orientation, natural language processing, conditional iteration strings, and again, as I said, at the end, like in the beginning, you may not have gotten to arrays, so you can do that later on if you come back to it in terms of review at the end of the course, something like that. Okay. And this is basically the layout, you know, in terms of hours that could be spent on these things. And I didn't spend that much on it, and I didn't do the array thing actually, but I did go through 1 through 4 in about a week. And the kids were really excited about it. But it's basically time management, and you can do more. The first one, by the way, if you go through there, there is an internet access where you can actually have them go and look at other chat bots that are out there on the web. And you may or may not want to do that, because there are appropriate chat bots and there are inappropriate chat bots. And so that is something I didn't do. But you know, if you can block off sites and things like that, or just give them a list of ones that they can go to, then that might be more appropriate. Or you can just skip that and go ahead to the number 2. But just be warned, if you do the search the web for your various chat bots, yeah, things could happen. Okay. The second one is the picture lab. And as I said, this one right here was spearheaded by Barb Erickson from the, and those of you that went to the thing yesterday, you got probably all the information. You probably know more than I do about this particular case study, because, you know, she and her husband actually have been working on this for years. But the idea is that it does go through image processing and 2D arrays and pixels. And you're working, one of the major things, and that's another thing about these labs, is that the vocabulary in the labs I'm going to try and push for this as a member of the committee. We spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to word these questions so that students understand what's going on. So if they had a common vocabulary, then it would make, you know, writing the questions a lot easier. And for instance, you know, the idea of row major versus column major order, we even had that on this past year's exam. And you know, some kids didn't understand the column, even though we spelled it out and drew pictures and everything. Now I think we're going to spend less effort trying to reiterate that, and we expect them to know row major, horizontal, column major, vertical, and things of that nature. So by going through these things, you'll be able to pick up on those. Again, 2D arrays are arrays of arrays, as I mentioned earlier. That is in here. Also, how to use for each loops with 2D arrays are in here as well, or for, you know, the enhanced for loops. She goes through the pixels and the colors and how you're manipulating colors and things of that nature. And she goes through the idea of mirroring images as well. And so, once again, you're given, and then some of the things that get to be a little, you know, difficult are at the end. And she has those as alternate things that you can actually do in your examples. So you can see this is how it's sort of laid out. There are like 9 ideas. The one that is, I think, is most important is this number 4. It used to be optional, but I think they've taken the optional out of it, which is probably a good thing. The 2D arrays in Java, this particular write-up, Unit 4, is actually the thing that talks about arrays of arrays, the newest thing. And, you know, manipulating rows and columns, and so that we don't have to have num rows and num calls in our definitions anymore. She also goes through about how to set this up when you're running through the actual lab, so that when you download it, I personally don't do any of the stuff. Well, I'm not one of those that's into creating projects, because projects, I don't know, I have older machines and things just never go where they're supposed to go, so I don't deal with them. I just run the program itself and all is good. But in here, she's got a couple of things. One is the Picture Explorer, is where they start the actual explanation. And this one talks about the colors when you run through it. I'll just show you it quickly. Well, that's not exact. And it brings up the picture, basically. And then, you probably can't see it, but when you click a particular color, you can see that it gives you the RGB values of each color. inside, amongst other things. And then, where's the other one? Color chooser. This one right here, you can actually pull in a picture using the color chooser, for instance. And once again, it goes through and talks about the various values, the RGB of the colors, or how you can create new colors by sliding the bar and manipulating them, and so on and so forth. Come on. It's just not working. Why am I looking there when I can look here? But you can manipulate the various colors for the red, blue, and green and actually create new colors. And then when you get to the picture explorer, like we had earlier, what I did, for instance, was, you know, kids like to work with their current technology, and I'm not a lover of it, but you know, cell phones and their cameras, so I had them take a picture of each other, and then they loaded up on their own picture, and they explored themselves, you know, about what color makes up their complexion or something. And one kid, you know, she had a big smile on her face, and then she took her and she clicked on her teeth. She says, "Oh man, I thought my teeth were whiter than that," or something, you know. So, you know, the color isn't going to lie to you or anything, but it does go through and, you know, pick up the various colors and work from there. And she has a whole series of changes that she has you make with this. And ultimately, you get to this picture class and picture tester. And in the student version, it looks like this, and what they have to do is create or finish off these methods. They have a whole series of methods that you have to write. And, you know, they're telling you what gets passed in, they describe what's going on, and then you run them. And I just opened up a couple of them just to show you, for illustration purposes, what happens when you do test 0 blue. And so I've opened up a couple of these things, but this right here is basically, you started, for instance, with this swan, and then you mirrored it to the left, basically. So you switch them over to axes, and it's talking about, you know, interchanging your X and Y values and things like that, and then reassigning them. The others, you know, test 0 blue, or you change everything to blue, then that's that one. And you're manipulating the various colors, or you're minimizing blues or the grays, or, I mean, there are lots of interesting things that are incorporated in this particular lab. And so my students also sort of like this, you know, they got into it. We worked on it for about 2 weeks, actually, and we could have gone further, but again, time, weather, the whole 9 yards. I was like, okay, we got the idea behind 2D arrays, but they found it to be really interesting, and they liked it. And, you know, I also have her book, actually, but I haven't had a chance to use it. Maybe I can now that I might have more time. Who knows? But that's what the picture lab, but there are a whole lot of these things. And like I said, you as a teacher, you know, if you don't know how to answer to do these various things, then of course you have all the answers. In the picture class, in the teacher folder, are all the answers. I mean, it's all there. So that, personally, I try to do it myself and then figure out, okay, I wouldn't have done it that way, you know, or a lot of times kids will do things in a different way than you're thinking. And so I'm always amazed at what they come up with, or how they've actually figured out how to do various things. But it does work with multiple classes, but it is not heavily into inheritance or anything like that. But all the answers are in the picture class, but the picture tester, if you want chroma key, for instance, this right here will change everything to like gray or something. Well, it should be the last one that comes up. I have it all open. Yeah, it did the background, I think, didn't it? Gosh, well, yeah. But there are a lot of things in this particular one that is really interesting, and some of them are a little hard to work with. The collage, actually, I found that to be a little challenging, but one of my students really got into it. She created it was sort of a gothic collage, but it was really interesting in how she did it. But this is the one that is just there. But Again, you can create all sorts of things by pulling in pictures and manipulating them and working with, but it does give them an application of how they might use 2D arrays in their course. Besides just adding the rows, adding the columns, finding the average, you know, doing something mathematical, which is sort of my background. So that's what I instantly think of, finding averages and things like that. But this right here sort of gave them other avenues as to how they could use 2D arrays. Okay? Let's get rid of all of that. Go away. Go away. Go away. All right. Where are you? Come on. Slideshow. There we go. So again, this is her time frame that she put into place, and you may use more or less, but again, it gives you a foothold or something to work around. Okay, the 11's lab, and this is the one I have not had a chance to put into practice exactly, into my classes. But this is the one, it's written by original Michael Clancy, and then Judy Romchek and Glenn Martin, who's also on the committee. They did a lot of editing and reworking and reworking and reworking to come up with this game right here called the Game of 11s. And basically, let's just look at it. I don't know if you all have you all played with it? 'Cause it took me days before I actually won the first game. And then right before I came here, I was playing and I won. I was like, yes. But it's in the activity, you know, he has a lot of activities going on, and they start with, and we'll look at some of the others, but let's just look at the game itself. In activity 6, there is a jar file, which actually has a working version of the game so that you can see the game, I hope. Actually, let's see. Oh, I don't think I can make this any bigger. No, it's not. Oh, stop. And anyway, the idea behind it is, let me restart it because it's never, my mouse is not working. Come on. So here's the idea behind the game. You're trying to click on 2 cards that add up to be 11. And when you do that, it'll replace it with another set of cards. And hopefully you can find 2 others that can add up to be 11. The only other combination is that if you have Jack, King, or Queen, that also gets taken off the pile. And it'll replace it with 3 new cards. So for instance, I will see a 2 and a 9. Why are you doing that? And then I say replace. And so I replace them. And if you don't get a message here saying the game is over, then there's another combination that works up here. So I'm looking at 6 and 5. I know I can't be that lucky to win. Replace. Okay. 7 and 4. Come on. Replace. 10 and ace. Replace. Ah. So now this right here basically says I can't win now. There's nothing up here that will add up to 11. And I tell you, it took me a day and a half. I'm serious, a day and a half before I'd ever won. But you know, kids get into this. You know, they restart, they try again, but you can play for a while and see. All right, what do I have here? I can't even see. 8 and 3. 8. Come on. And 3. 2 and 9. This is not looking well. 5 and 6. Replace. Well, 6 and 5. Replace.
So what modifications will they make to this?
Well, what happens is, in the beginning, he actually has, all right, let's go through the actual layout of this thing. Where am I? The modifications is actually to create the game, first of all. And so, in the beginning, well, let's go through it. He spends time on actually shuffling a deck of cards, you know, the basics behind the game. So, the various ways to shuffle, one is more efficient than the other. And he sort of leads you through, you know, as you go through the various labs, you know, start out this way and then end up the way I really want it to happen, basically. And then ultimately, you can create the game of 13s. or other games, they're based on this same idea because you do have the GUI that's there, and you can just manipulate the GUI to your benefit. Now again, I have not put this into practice in a class yet, so I'm sort of looking forward to it. I have 2 second-year students this year, so that at the beginning of the year, that's what they're going to work on while I work with the other 24 of my A students, so that I can see what kind of questions they're going to have, because I really haven't had a chance to put it into practice. And as a teacher, you learn a lot from working with your students because, like I said, they will come up with things that you really have to dig deep sometimes to figure out the answer, or sometimes they come up with solutions you've never even thought of. And even as a grader, you see things like that too, as if you become an AP grader, because in my room, there was one I could have sworn it would not have worked, but it did. So it's a learning thing. But again, is the idea behind it. You have encapsulation inheritance. So again, with this one, this chart right here actually shows you the level. We have the GUI, which you're not working with as much, but yeah, the card class, and then the deck is made up of cards, and then you have the boards, and then your actual simulation. So it's building the game itself. But as you go through the actual thing, let's see if I can find the PDF. I had it open at one time. Where are you? That's picture 11s. There we go. This is the actual PDF that you will get with it. So it is sectioned off. So let's go to the beginning of it, where he's actually going through and, come on, page down. You're creating a card. And then you're creating a deck of cards. And then he works with the idea of shuffling cards. I want to get out of my way. Stop. And how to go through the perfect shuffle versus some of the other shuffles that are out there. You know, whether you should pull from the front, from the rear, really just randomly choose something and pull it out. And he's guiding you through what he wants to work as the most effective one. And then adding a shuffle to a method of a deck. And again, you just have to go through the actual lab itself to figure out how it works. But in my playing with it, you know, I had one idea, and we'll see if my students are going to have the same idea when we try to do it back in September, hopefully. But, and then the assertions idea, that's optional because we don't test that necessarily. And then as you go down further, he's actually creating the idea of pulling all of this together to create, because you're given an open framework of the 11s game, and then you have to go through and fill in the methods, basically. So, you know, it's one of those things where it gives you the methods, gives you a description of what's supposed to happen, you have the signature, and then you make the changes so that it will hopefully work as planned. But this is our OOP equivalent of giving them something for inheritance and all that. But as I said earlier in the discussion, you know, if you are a die-hard grid world person, that right there qualifies as your inheritance information. So therefore, you know, you can continue to work with grid world. We are not canceling it out. The only thing is that, you know, you're not going to have those test questions on grid world. It's the ideas, the concepts behind inheritance that's going to be tested on the exam. But
There won't be questions on any of these 3 labs.
nothing directly from the 3 labs, you know. Maybe the language or the verbiage, as I said earlier, that will help you to answer some of the questions, but you know, no one's going to say, okay, the perfect shuffle works this way, how would you make it be more perfect, or something along that level. No, there are not going to be any direct questions about the labs. So, as I said, anything that used to work will continue to work. But it is helpful to go through and look at the labs. You know, if you have time to incorporate them, or you have something else that's equally valuable in your course that you want to use, then feel free to use it as well. Okay, but so he's gone through, and then ultimately you create this game of 13s, and I have not gotten that far yet, so I really haven't tried to implement that. But yeah, you know, if you manipulate the GUI, you know, to print out the cards accordingly, then it can be basically any card game. So getting back to this, so this was his plan basically, and the number of hours used. So I said the first couple of things is just setting up in the beginning, you know, the card class and the deck class, manipulating those. Then 6, as I said, is the jar, so you can actually see it. And then when you start on 7, you're actually trying to build that game. So that's what I anticipate is going to be interesting, because they've seen how it works. Now, can they make their version of it work exactly the way this one does? We will see. And then the optional things, the 13s and the simulation of 11s, optional. But he's basically said 16 hours put toward this. And again, it's all about your timing and your, you know, how comfortable you feel about using this within the structure of your course. Okay? But make sure that you do download them, and you actually have to, because that's another part of the recertification process. So those of you that do have been certified and you have a course, in order for you to become recertified, basically, you do have to go and download these things from the site, the website, and to attest that you understand that Grid World is gone, labs are in. You have all seen that, haven't you? You're aware of that. So again, make sure that you do that, because when you click on it, that's all you have to do for the time being. And then the administrators have to do their part when they actually click on the magic button that says that this class is doing what we expect it to do. Okay? One thing I have to do before we have this College Board survey thing, that this brochure that we actually have to pass out. So if you all don't mind filling that out before you leave, she's passing some of those around. And I thought that we would actually have, I mean, for some of you that have actually played with these things, do any of you have best practices or some ideas that you come up with that worked well in your classes? Or has anyone actually used them before? Nobody. Wow. Yes, ma'am.
So for Chatbox, I think I just used it a little bit, and I used it pretty much the way it was. But and this is totally unofficial. If you haven't been in the reading and graded question one, this is your question. I'm going to make sure that I come up with an extension of Chatbox to revisit second semester, because I will say one of the most common things we see is that students are forgetting all of the notation or string methods and using array list and array notation on them. And I think a lot of that is just because we use array list and array so much second semester.
True.
And not as much just pure strings. That was a really, really, really common error, that they were interchanging the notation of it. So I definitely think that one of the things that would be useful is revisiting Chatbox, maybe in some extended way.
Right, I have seen people actually use these things as review for the exam, you know, rather than, you know, preaching them as they go. They're like, okay, today we're going to work on the chat bot, and someone said they use it as a review idea, which is good, because as she said, there's always, well, normally there's a string question of some sort that forces the issue of your understanding, you know, substring, index of, and things of that nature. Okay. Anybody else have any ideas or had any time to play with any of these labs? Because they are fun to play with, honestly. At least I know the first two. The third one, I will find out. Yes, ma'am.
I just a connection I made. Does anybody teach ECS? There's a chatbot part in the ECS curriculum.
Oh.
And so, like, I kind of just pulled a little bit of that into my, I don't teach ECS per se, but I put some of that curriculum. We did a chatbot in my introductory programming course. We did that unit where they just learn about chatbots and you talk about artificial intelligence. So it extends, and it gives you chatbots to check out.
Oh, good.
Specific ones
Good.
that are safe and fine, and so it totally connects to it. And so I had done that last year, so I'm kind of excited to see that the students have already seen and talked about chatbots. And
Right.
now we're going to
Actually have a lab that actually
Yeah.
utilizes some of those
So
ideas.
it kind of takes you through the lens.
The radio lab episode about chatbots actually part of it.
Oh, you do?
Talking with machines and everything.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
I wouldn't play the whole thing.
Oh, snippets of it, huh? Okay. Anyone else? Ideas or thoughts?
I have a question.
Yes.
I haven't looked at the labs in depth yet, but are we encouraged to do that in some collaborative way, in any way, or is it designed as an individual type of?
You could use it as a group project. I mean, I don't see why it can't be done as partners or things of that nature. So no, I mean, it's as long as they learn the concepts that are being taught. And I mean, if you want to do it as paired programming or something along that line, then that sounds like a great idea, actually. The whole idea is to sort of get them exposed to these types of things, because the things that are in these labs are, some of the common concepts that are taught or tested on the exam, and that's what we're looking for. And our hope was in the future to actually possibly add more labs to the list, to give you things that you could work with for the future.
Do you need me to have that, please?
Yes.
Before I just-
Please do. All right. How about, yes, sir?
Just curious about, so AP has issued a practice exam for teachers.
Yes.
Will a new one be issued that doesn't have grid world questions in it?
It's out there, actually. Just down. It's out there. Initially, when it came out, it had the grid world things in there, but it's basically the same one with some adaptations to it, actually. And in the future, the plan is, if I remember correctly, and I'm on the development committee, is after next year that we are going to try to release the 2015 exam in its entirety, so you can see the changes without grid world. That is our current plan. Yes, ma'am.
There is a new one for this year, though, right? A new practice exam.
Right. Well, it's not completely
Just
new.
put out.
It's on our site, the same place you download the lab.
Right.
If you log into your
Right. And
the secure one,
essentially,
secure documents and stuff.
because I haven't looked at it in detail, but what is not included and why it's out is because Grid World is not at all a part of it. So
Right.
it's an illustration of how
Yes.
it will look without Grid World.
Yes, completely. Okay. Other questions?
Sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to check. When I went to the AP Reader site, and it says it's still online. Do you know something about it? Okay. It is in Kansas City.
It is in Kansas City,
Okay,
yeah.
you said subject to change. Yes, I was like, well, maybe it changed and you knew.
Well, they told us at the reading that it was changed. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, the site didn't say that. So okay, she's
Oh, yes, yeah, that's right. Lynn is my direct supervisor,
Yes,
so what she says goes. But yes, it is in Kansas. Like I said, I'm going to have to fly, and I really don't like to fly. But I flew here. What's that? Oh, that's what they say, good ribs, so it might be worth going. Oh, I'm going to hold them to that, because everyone's saying, yes, this is the rib capital, We ate at the, what was the place we ate at? It was on the river, it was in the boathouse, yes.
We should split the difference in meetings.
Okay, any other questions? Hopefully I've alleviated some of your fears about the changes to the exam, and that you feel that if what was working before, it will continue to work, but try to incorporate the ideas behind the labs in your courses, and it should make your course a little bit better.